How to build the TDD habit in your team. I'm Ryan Marsh, and in this talk, I'm going to help you to help your teams to do test-driven development habitually. Okay? So we all know about the value of test-driven development. We just heard about it. So a lot of people don't do it. So we're going to help you to get into that habit. So just by show of hands, how many people write tests? Be honest. There's a few honest people going like this. I appreciate the honesty. Some of you are liars. Okay, out of the people who write tests, who occasionally write the test before they write the code? At least occasionally. How about like habitually, like every time? Okay. Out of those folks, how many of you feel like weird if you're not writing a test first? Okay, that's my goal, is to help you get there and to help others get there, okay? So I think a better title for this talk would be how to MK Ultra mind control your team to test-driven development. Is that still within the community guidelines? Am I cool? Okay, all right. Mind control is good, guys. All right, so not here to debate the value of test-driven development because you'd get wrecked. Because I have James in my corner. But I am going to help you build the habit. So I have a test-driven development workshop that I've been doing for clients. I've honed it over the years. It's made me a lot of money, okay? And I'm going to give it to you for free today. I'm going to teach you how to do it so you can take it into your team and mind control your team into doing test-driven development, okay? Just giving it away for free. As a matter of fact, feel free to take this, do it, and make money. I mean it. Like, I want people doing test-driven development habitually. So that's what we're going to do today. So the results. Let's talk about the results that we get from this. So when you do this, you'll get 30% of the people who take the class, usually no more than 30%. Of course, it depends on what you're working with going into the class. 30% will come out wanting to do TDD habitually. Like, they'll have that bug in them, okay? And that's what we want. And actually, that's really good. I teach a lot, and like if 30% of the people come away like really changing the way that they work when they go back to their desk, like that's good stuff. Another 30% will write smaller tests. This is still good. Another 30% will just start writing tests. And the remaining 10% are beyond help. I mean, they're just not ready yet. I mean, we're all at different points in our journey. So 10% are just not going to be ready yet. If you gave them the workshop again in 2 or 3 years after they've had more experience, it might click for them in that moment. And that's OK. That's OK. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to email you guys. I'm going to email this to you like in much more detail afterwards. So I'll send you my email. I'll show you my email address. Send me an email. I'll send you a long PDF with tons of details. So if you could just do me a favor and just like don't take notes. Just sort of like let's connect and let me sort of talk you through this, okay? Because the notes that you're going to take, I promise you, my notes are way more detailed, okay? And then what I'm about to give you, word for word, everything plus more. Okay. So. The problem is, here's how this all started. Clients would come to me, they'd say, help my people do TDD. And usually these are non-technical people, which is like, why do you even care? You're like not a programmer. How would you even know that they should be doing TDD? I don't know, they read it in a magazine. So, but they wanted people to do TDD. And so they had either paid somebody to give their team a test-driven development training, or they had hired me, they'd hire me and I'd do it. And people, they do it, and they just go back to their desk, and they wouldn't write their test first. And I couldn't figure out why this was. And to be fair, say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Yesterday, Kent Dodds, I like test-driven development, but I only do it about 5% of the time. The rest of my tests are written post-implementation. I think this is fine. So, and I'm glad that he's not here to defend himself. So if even Kent Dodds doesn't do test-driven development more than 5% of the time, right, then it is obviously a hard thing to do. There's something about it that's missing, right? So let me tell you how I became a habitual test-driven development to do TDD habitually. So rewinding back to December 8th of 2012, I went to Global Day of Code Retreat. And it was this really cool thing, a bunch of programmers get together on a Saturday, missing time with their families, really great, to do code katas. And we did these things, and just the way that things lined up, I came away sort of removing the programmer neurosis that makes you have to program defensively and always fearful of what's going to happen to this code that I'm writing right now, to forgetting about all of that and just triangulating all my fears into the code through tests and writing tests first, to the point now where I can't write a single line of code without a test. Like, I feel naked if there's not failing tests. I cut that slide out, by the way. So it's an urge that I can't explain. Assert.js, have you ever had urges that you can't explain? Yeah, so it's obviously not a logical thing. It's an emotional thing. And what I want you to first key in on is that much of what we do and how we work is not based on our logical choices. Much of what we do as developers, much more than we'd like to admit, is from the lizard brain. It's the emotional, habitual, feeling sort of part of the brain, okay? A lot of the way that we work is not as logical. We'd like to think that we're little computers, like just imparting our amazing logic into this other computer, this lesser computer, right? That's not how it works. We are animals, and the way that we work is impacted strongly by that. So this all happened to me. It changed the way that I work, but I really didn't understand why until years later I came into contact with this book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And if you haven't read it, I think just generally for anybody, it's a wonderful, wonderful read. Habits are weird things with us. I mean, we all know that we should do TDD. We also know we should eat vegetables. We also know we should go to the gym. How many of us ate vegetables all week and went to the gym every day? Okay, but we all know it's good. Yeah, and have you ever noticed how the people who do just want to tell everybody about it? So I read this book, and I really learned about how habits work, and then it clicked. And then I was able to I learned about the basal ganglia, the part of the brain where habits are stored, which also plays a key role in the development of emotions, memories, pattern recognitions. So there's the basal ganglia. It looks weird. It's in the center of your brain. It's one of the oldest parts of your brain. It's from back when we were I don't know, not even apes yet, like lizards or something, like these creatures crawling out of the water, right? So that's the animal brain. Up there is the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex. That's the voice that won't shut up, that thinks it's in control, okay? So decisions are made in the prefrontal cortex. So that when we're programming, we think we're working up here in the prefrontal cortex, the language, right? Really what's happening is the prefrontal cortex is always just trying to make up a story to explain what the basal ganglia is doing. So decisions are here, habits are there. We've got to get eating vegetables, going to the gym, doing test-driven development from there to there. How do we do that, right? So we do that. We got to get there from there to there. Okay, I don't know. So this is basically me at the end of every month when I talk to my wife, and I'm like, where did all the money in the checkbook go? And she's like, I don't know. So it wasn't because I bought a new computer. more about what we do is controlled by our habits than what we logically admit. It's crazy when you look into the research, okay? There are people who can like make a sandwich and take a walk around the block, but because of brain damage in the prefrontal cortex, they could not explain to you where they are, how to get home, or anything like that. They don't know where they are. If you were to ask them, where are you right now? They couldn't tell you. They couldn't tell you where they are, but yet they can do those kinds of things. It's like, have you ever driven to work and then you got to work and you're like, you don't even remember the trip? You're like, how did I even get here? So it's very, very powerful. So how do habits get formed and they get out of the prefrontal cortex into the basal ganglia? They do this through a series of steps: cue, routine, reward. Okay? So basically there's some sort of a cue, some sort of a craving perhaps. Maybe it's middle of the afternoon. Gosh, you know, I always get a cup of coffee this time of day. I don't know, I just get up and I just like go get a cup of coffee in the cafeteria, and then I come back to my desk and then I feel better. And what your body does is maybe the first few times, maybe you were conscious about that, maybe you weren't really thinking about it, but that reward gets cemented in the endocrine system of your body. And the body then takes that, right, optimizes it, because the prefrontal cortex is doing way too much work. It optimizes it and moves it closer to the hardware, down in the basal ganglia. Basal ganglia doesn't speak English, but it can do things like remind you to go get coffee in the afternoon. It's crazy. So you may be familiar with Pavlov. He was studying the digestion of dogs, how they salivated. So he trained them to salivate at the ring of a bell. What's really funny about this, though, is that like we're much more complicated than a dog. Like that would never work on us, right? Yeah, no. So we want to replace that with a different habit. We want to do that with this one, right? Red-green refactor. Okay. So that's what this is about. That's how this workshop works. Okay. But first, before I explain to you how to do it, a word from our sponsors. Flaky tests are a part of a balanced breakfast. Okay. All right, so that's from last night at dinner with the speakers. All right, so learning objectives. When we start out a class, we start out with learning objectives. Oh, I'm running out of time. Okay. We start with learning objectives. We want them to feel the urge to write a test first, okay? So the cue is they have work to do in a time crunch. The response is going to be a naive test, make it pass, check and code. The reward is the feeling of safety, knowing the code works, and it works when it's done. Habit loop 2 is going to be that I have code that needs refactoring, tests are green, I can keep the test green while I refactor the code, I write no new tests, and the reward is a feeling of safety, knowing that your code works and cleans. You know, safety there. Safety is like, that's something deep inside of us, right? That's something, that's a way down there on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's one of the most important things. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, when you're going to organize this, the first thing you do is you don't tell them this is a TDD workshop. We're trying to trick them, okay? Can't tell them it's a TDD workshop. Okay, so get them all in a room, and you're going to do this in cycles. I'm going to break it down for you. First thing you do is you show them a simple problem, but you make it look hard. Okay? So I really like to use Conways Game of Life. It's got 4 simple rules. Any live cell with fewer, well, who's familiar with Conways Game of Life? Okay, a lot of people. It's basically 4 simple rules, but it's really crazy because there's, I'm going to skip through this if I can. With these 4 simple rules, you can do some pretty crazy stuff. These are all like just different generations. People have built digital clocks in it. People have built the Game of Life in Game of Life. Turtles all the way down. Yeah, so I show them this, and I'm like, okay, it's on an infinite 2D grid. Immediately, where do they go? Data structures. How am I going to store this, right? Okay, so we're going to start them out by showing them a simple problem, make it look hard. I'm going to let them work on it and try to solve it for 30, 45 minutes. You're going to gauge this time by the skill level of the developers in the room. and the programming language that they're using. The only people who I've ever had solve this in, or solve it the fastest was Scala folks. I'm giving stuff away here. So we let them solve it. So when they're done, after the 30, 45 minutes, what do I do? Obviously, what do you do when you're done with your work? You commit it. You check it in, right? No. Delete your code. Ha, 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 ha. Why? Well, I don't know. So basically, I'm just kidding. So the reason why we delete our code is because it's not about getting it done. Okay? And I don't want you to have the reward. Okay? Rewards come later when you do the right thing. Ding, 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 ding. So you're going to delete your code. So you get no reward. Then we're going to hold a retrospective. Okay? What type of data structures did you use? Like, 15 minutes. What type of data structures did you use? How did you approach it? Which rule did you start with? Just talk to them, right? A little retrospective. We can talk about it. We'll sit down. Now, how do you get people to delete their code? Because programmers are not going to do it. They're like, you can pry my cold, dead hands from this code. So, mind control. The first person who deletes their code, will you please stand up? And then you clap. Right? Then the social forces, sooner or later, we're all clapping for each other because we all deleted our code. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to add a constraint involving tests. Okay? Then we're going to repeat steps 2 and 3. I'm going to let you solve it again. We're going to have a retrospective. I'm going to surprise you and make you delete your code. But there's a constraint I added involving tests. We're going to talk about those constraints in a minute. But you're going to get a little reward. Okay? You're going to get a little more reward along the way. You're going to have passing tests, or you're going to achieve some small objective related to tests. So we're going to repeat those steps again, another reward, repeat those steps again, another reward, repeat those steps again. So what are these constraints I'm adding? So each cycle, each 30 to 45-minute cycle, the first one might be, so for cycle number 2, the first one is, I just let you solve it. And everybody goes like off the rails, right? Because they're thinking infinite 2D space, or like they're implementing like Bigtable or something. So have a passing test, or pass the keyboard, no talking. You write the failing test, you have to make it pass. You really got to make it small if we're going to pass the keyboard back and forth and get anywhere. TDD like you mean it, right? We're getting progressively further and further along. If you have some really, really sharp people that are grinding through it, give them stuff like, throw them some curve laws, like no if statements, no loops. Especially people in functional languages, people with like no if statements and no loops, they roll right through that. I can't tell how much time I have left.
10 minutes.
Okay. Great. So, okay. Oh, small methods, fewer than 5 lines. No language primitives. That's if you're really throwing them curveballs. But really, you want to focus it around tests. So we're going to do this iteratively. Now, why do we want to do this quickly all in one day, right? You could theoretically experience all of this stuff in your journey to test-driven development every day at work if you were to wake up one morning and say, you know what, today I'm going to write a test first. And then the next day, I'm going to write a smaller test, or I'm going to play this game, the keyboard game, with my friend at work, or I'm going to TDD like I mean it, or something like that, right? And but the problem is that the cue response reward cycle is so spread out that it doesn't really. Humans are actually really, really bad at connecting actions and their consequences, as many of our lives would show. Mine. So we want this all in a tight loop. So this is the real kicker. I finished the day, the last cycle, with a 3-minute TDD cycle. So I have a timer that's literally going off. I use a bell this whole time. So at the end of every section, whether it's a retrospective or anything, we're using a bell. This all leads up to this moment. So you have 3 minutes to write a failing test. If you have a failing test, you can check it in. If you don't, when that bell rings, get reset hard head. It's gone. You're back to whatever your last commit was. If it's nothing, it's nothing. Then you have 3 minutes to make that pass. Then you have 3 minutes to refactor. Again, at every moment, you can check in, like if you have a failing test, you can check that in. And the second cycle, make it pass. If you have it passing, you can check it in. Last cycle, if you took the time to refactor, you can also skip that step if you don't need to refactor. You could jump back to writing a failing test. But if you don't accomplish your goal, in those 3 minutes, you have to reset hard, right? So it's kind of funny because this bell will be going off every 3 minutes, and people are just like this, and like the bell will go off, and they'll like jump, like ah. I'm not a sociopath. I'm just trying to help. So basically, this cycle goes on for about 30 to 45 minutes, again, depending on the group. And then we're going to hold a retrospective and sing Kumbaya. So at the end of this retrospective, we're going to touch base and we're going to talk about, like, how are you going to program differently? What did you learn? How did your code differ from cycle to cycle? How did the act of testing impact the data structures you chose, or the amount of functionality that you took off, or how big of a chunk of work you took off at one time, right? It's like, we want to really think about this and talk about it. And you'll find that, usually people will be like, wow, I don't have to worry at work anymore, right? Paul was talking about, that anxiety. I don't have to worry anymore. I can just write tests first, and that's cool. I'll feel safe afterwards. Many of us have never actually been in this cycle. If you've ever worked in a high-speed development shop that like is hardcore TDD, I saw some guys at Pivotal Labs do this once, and it was like wild to watch. And they were like basically like in a tight loop pairing, like writing a failing test, making it pass, then watching it go green on CI, and just like boom, 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 boom. Many of us don't have that experience. Once you have this experience and you get the feedback, it changes everything on like on a level that surpasses the logical, right? So yeah, that's our Kumbaya. Okay, so this is a lot of cycles. This is a long day. Here's an example of how you could do it. This is one I did a couple months ago down in Miami for a cruise ship company. And so we start out, maybe 8 a.m. we come in, we have breakfast and coffee. We have an intro. I'm going to talk to you about Conways Game of Life, scare your pants off, make it look more complicated than it is, right? Make you think really big when really you need to be thinking small. And then I'll tell you about the structure of the day. We'll do session 1, right? That's 45 minutes. We'll have a 15-minute retrospective. The retrospective doesn't have to take a full 15 minutes. It's just a quick conversation, let them go to the bathroom, whatever. We get back down. Session number 2, we go through it. Lunch, you really want to try to give them like an hour lunch, like a good, solid hour to recoup. Sometimes you can do session 1 and 2 and 3 before lunch, depending on your day and how it's structured. Then you'll come back and you'll start right away and you'll do the remaining sessions. What you'll find is that by the end of the day, a lot of people get burnt out. They get fried. Not all of us, most of us can't really work that focused and intensely all day. I mean, the average person can't be in, if you read Cal Newport's book about deep work, most of us can't even be in that focused state for more than 4 hours a day. So this is a tough day. This is a challenging day, but it's fun. So what you may want to do is, as you're taking people through this, gauge what complications you're going to add in the later sessions and whether you're going to cut a session off at the end of the day. But your last session of the day, you definitely want to be this 3-minute cycle. That's where it really all comes home. This is me. I'm at the stack.io. If you take a second, shoot me an email. I will send you everything I have on this. There we go. I will send you everything I have on this if you please tell me 2 things. What went well about this and what could have been better about this talk. And I'll give you everything I have on this. I'll be happy to respond. And if you have any questions about this, if you want to host this, if you want to know more about how to organize this at work, like dealing with the social issues of like getting people to partake in your mind control experiment, please talk to me after work or after this talk. I I can help you with that. So thank you very much for your time.